This podcast is part of the Listen Frederick Podcast Network. To learn more, visit listenfrederick.com.
The Fedora Files.
Hello and welcome to the Fedora Files. I'm Gregory Fedora, and with me today is Darren. And I don't want to tell too much, but if you're watching the video, you can kind of see something that's going on here. And I met Darren and we started talking, and I found out some fascinating things about you. And do you want to explain what this is all about? What is it that you do?
Okay, sure.
In this aspect of your life.
In this aspect, right. We have many, don't we?
Yes.
So in this aspect of my life, I teach Japanese sword art called Tenshinsho Jigen Ryu. And it is a 500-year-old sword art, comes from Japan. Mm-hmm. And so we train in these various weapons on a weekly basis.
So, like when I was growing up, and I told you this before, that my first hero was Zorro. And seeing those movies, seeing those shows, I was always fascinated with the sword fighting. But in my mind, I never thought I could learn that until my mom found somebody. And so it's similar to that. Like when I see, like in martial arts films or in like The Last Samurai, you see this sword play and I see it, I'm like, it's fascinating. That's so awesome. But in my mind, I just keep thinking, I don't think about, I could learn that. How did you discover this? Because to me, this is just like the idea to find, wait, someone teaches this, I can do this. How did you fall into this?
It was a bit by luck.
Okay.
So much like you, I have a long childhood love affair with martial arts. In our day, we had the Kung Fu theater that would play, on the weekends. Nonstop. And I remember being mesmerized by those guys. I couldn't believe how beautiful they moved. And then you naturally see swords and sorcery through different films and whatnot, through various aspects. And you see samurai as well. And it captivated me. Mm-hmm. But like you, it seemed inaccessible. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in Maine in the mid to late 80s, mm-hmm. and there was nothing but really karate, if you were lucky, to study. And I found that my inclinations were more towards soccer or things like that. But deep in my mind, I thought, martial arts, I have to take a mental note and say, I'm going to get back to that. So in college, I was finally able to. They offered martial arts there, so I started studying Aikido, mm-hmm. which was a fantastic art, and I loved it. And over the years, I kept that passion alive at times, and then went back and invested full time. And we were living in Seattle at the time, mm-hmm. and I had a wonderful teacher out there at Two Cranes Aikido, and I loved every moment of studying under her, but then we had to move. Mm-hmm. So what ended up happening is we wanted to come back to the East Coast because of my daughter, mm-hmm. And just that we knew that we needed a little bit to be closer to family. Mm-hmm. So we did, and I looked around for places to study. Mm-hmm. And the selection around here is not surprising, right? You've got karate and kung fu, and then Aikido. There was this one school. And then there was this person who had just recently started teaching Japanese swordsmanship. So I was like, I have to go check that out because that seems like a dream come true if it's real.
Yeah.
So I did, and I showed up. This was perhaps within a month of moving here.
Okay.
And I was hooked ever since. And so now 11 years later, it's me that's teaching, which is fascinating. But yeah.
Now that process you kind of went over with me, or like when we were talking. But how do you because this is like, and this could just be the influence of the Kung Fu theater on me. Mm. But it seems like it's a very sect-oriented styles. And maybe I'm wrong, but like Japanese swordplay would be like a house or a family teaches a certain style.
Yes.
And so, how does somebody who comes from Maine mm-hmm. get accepted mm-hmm. into it to the point that they allow you to teach their style?
So, I think 20 years ago, far less possible. I think maybe not 20, but maybe 40. 40 years ago, it was far less accessible. You'd have to go and live in Japan and probably go through the normal ablutions of trying to enter a family-style dojo there. Sadly, so this Tenshinsho Jigen Ryu comes from a family of schools called Koryu, which basically just means traditional or old school martial art. And it basically is the martial arts that come before the Meiji era, before the restoration of the emperor. And back then it was, as you suggested, very highly structured along a family. Ours grew up in Satsuma, which is down in the south of Kyushu, which is the main island.
Okay.
And over the years, especially after World War II, the number of people who studied these arts dwindled, mostly because it was outlawed. That was a big factor, but you still had competition arts, like that was the growth of Aikido and Judo and Karate, and those things became modern arts, even though they have roots way back when. Our schools sort of went underground for a bit and then came back, but we never had the same popularity. And largely it was to do with, just the other sports and modern sports like boxing and kendo and sumo and all those. Well, sumo's been around for a while, but those had the cultural limelight from then on. And I think in Japan it was a bit of a, I don't know if taboo is a strong word, but I think people might be wary of it because of their history. Yeah. Of especially being aggressors in the world wars. So, long story a bit longer. There's only maybe 10 Koryu schools left, roughly. And I think that might be a number that is like held in some tome somewhere. But I know there are a lot of Koryu schools still being studied, especially here in America. So, what ended up happening is 16 years ago, the head of our school came over to America and did demonstrations. And this was done up in New Jersey, I think. And so he basically made it accessible to the West and said, hey, I'm here to, make this art come flourish in your country and see, and see if we can gather more students and breathe new life into our art. So the person that I studied under was one of the people who met him originally. And then, it just grew a little bit from there, piece by piece. And now we have dojos in Miami and North Carolina and up here and other branches that are we're trying to get underway as well.
Oh, that's very cool. I mean, it's cool because it does, like, I love history and I love folklore. And so it keeps it going. It's sad that it went on, had to go underground, but I'm glad that it didn't get to the point that it was just gone. Yes. Because there are a lot of times these things disappear and they never come back.
And that's what happened with European swordplay, right? Yeah. Except for outside of what made it into mainstream fencing. Yeah. I mean, Europe was just like Japan. They had sword schools everywhere and weapon schools everywhere.
Yeah, and there's different, everyone, like in fencing, it's just like epee, foil, and saber. But I mean, there's broadsword, there's short sword, there's dagger, but there's a different style of fighting. Yeah. And you don't really you see it like in movies, but you don't know how legit that is. It's just people are coming out with what would you do with it, but there were, in the infantry, there were specific people with specific kind of swords or weapons, and they had a specific reason in how they did stuff. But we've lost that, and like you said, and so, but now you have all these different, I'm assuming the wooden ones are kind of practice.
Practice and contact.
Okay,
So this, let me work my way through just this one first. Okay. So this is just, we call it a bokken. And it's a sword that's made for contact under kumitachi. Kumitachi is paired sword work. Okay. So this is used as well as this. These are two different styles.
And one has like a hilt.
Yeah, that's a suba. Okay, so this protects the hands from various contact. This requires a bit more concentration and safety.
Because it has nothing.
This actually comes from, this style of bokken comes from Katori Shinto Ryu, which was one of the original ryus founded, 600,000-700,000 years ago. So they use a stouter bokken that's a bit flatter. You can see that there's not much curve to it. But the end has been blunted for safety reasons. It's heavier. You can feel that it's quite.
Oh, that could hurt somebody.
Yeah,
that's nice.
And a sword like this focuses your ability to move through your center, which is sort of what we love to teach. This, on the other hand, is much lighter.
All right.
Still is white oak and is able to withstand contact, bokken to bokken. And so our focus here really is to train your ability to really stand opposite someone. And once you get past that fear, which you're constantly trying to buff out, you work on things like how is your distance, how is your timing, and we have very specific drills, and they're all done very respectfully, with safety as being primary, which largely relies on me to keep the distances so that as on my side of the person who pushes and allows the other person to do the technique. I have to keep myself safe while offering instruction on correct movements.
Yeah.
This is actually bamboo that's been split. You can hear it.
Yeah.
So this comes from the Yagyu Shinkage line. And about 600 years ago, around somewhere mid 1500s, the Shinkage school decided that they needed a weapon that allowed you to be safer but still maintain contact, right? So here, I don't want to be hit by this, not ever. And so we train our students never to touch with this.
Yeah.
This, on the other hand, can hit you and not hurt all that much.
Yeah.
It will still deliver a lesson, but this is not, we don't use this in the dojo per se. This is an example of our curriculum that I don't quite let our students do yet. So yeah, you can see that's much lighter.
Now, why is the leather just there to help also to deaden it, and also so it doesn't split?
Well, because the bamboo is split, it has rough edges.
Oh, okay,
so it's for protection.
Yeah, okay, that's awesome.
This is an oak style suburito, which basically just means heavy bokken. It's oak style used by the famous Minamoto Musashi. And you use something like this to develop your fine motor coordination at a slower speed.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, and this is a lighter one. This is only about 1.15 kilograms. They go up to 20.
Now, they're all oak, right?
Well,
except for the bamboo.
Yeah.
But now this could be a dumb question. Was it specifically always had to be oak, or is that just what was over in Japan, or is it just over time they've realized oak's stronger than the others? Or
I think it's that last one. They
I didn't know there's like a spiritual thing to it, like because I know sometimes there
are different kinds of oaks, and there are different kinds of hardnesses. Like this one is unbreakable, right? This is you just fashioned in a way that is really solid. Both of these are white oak. This is red oak.
Yeah.
So they maintain in the wood that you look for. You look for a combination of resiliency and weight and flexibility.
Okay.
Too flexible, it tends to not be as useful and a little bit more dangerous. Not flexible enough, and it becomes too rigid, which means it'll fracture and break easier.
Yeah.
So much like metals, they look to find those combinations that worked. I'm sure what happened was a lot of people were injured, and they kept refining their process and choosing different woods until they find the ones that didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. And just trained.
Yeah.
So then you go on to the.
So this is a daisho, which means just a sword set. So this is the wakizashi. Wakizashi were used. Basically, they were kept on the body of the samurai at all times. So when you were inside your house, or traveling around outside, no matter what, outside of meeting important people, you would have this on you. And both of these are non-sharpened. These are iaito.
Okay.
So basically, they're a combination of metals that cannot produce an edge.
Okay.
However, the pointy part is quite pointy. Yeah. So it's just sort of this this beautiful thing where it's worn and carried, and it is used for like home defense or two-handed swordsmanship.
Okay.
Musashi really fashioned the idea of two-handed swordsmanship out of the idea of if you have two swords, why not use two swords?
Okay.
That was his basic his idea.
Philosophy.
Yeah. So if you
It
want,
makes sense. Yeah. Now I'm gonna it's not really sure. I'm gonna show my ignorance of all this, and it's only because I used to watch the cartoon Samurai Jim. I think it's Samurai Jim or Samurai. Did you ever see that?
I think, yeah.
But he was under the thing that every time he pulled his samurai out, it had to find blood. And so oftentimes he just had to cut himself. Is there any is that based off of any kind of thing? Do you know? They would only pull their sword in battle or in.
So
is that any kind of? I know there's 8 virtues and things like that.
There's truth to that.
Okay.
Largely, it was to prevent samurai from being aggressive.
Okay.
So when the Tokugawa shogunate took power in the early 1600s, they made a lot of rules about samurai. They said, hey, you can't use this weapon anymore. We lost too many men, so let's not do that. Nobody's allowed to use the naginata unless you're a woman. Okay. So that was the female samurai who learned the naginata.
Oh, so nice. So there were female samurai.
Oh yeah. Samurais were family. Okay. It didn't matter man or woman. You were part of a samurai family. A lot of that is hereditary. There were, it was a caste system in Japan. And so one of the things and the courtly virtues largely came into power during the Tokugawa, and you can see why many of them were meant to keep the samurai at bay, right? Tokugawa, the shogun, was like, hey, we finally reunified Japan after 100 or so many years of constant warfare. We're going to have none of that anymore, and I'm going to set up some rules. And he was very shrewd. All of them, all the Tokugawas, the first 3 or 4 where it really counted, were very shrewd about what they allowed and how they affected Japanese culture. And one of them was, hey, samurai shalt not draw their swords unless they plan on using it. And so that prevented you not fulfilling one of those virtues that you talk about, which was benevolence/compassion, because it was all too easy before the Tokugawa. It was all too easy for samurai to just be like, hey, I'm a samurai and I carry a sword and it's my right, so you get in my way. And that's that. No problem.
And that would have been more like a warlord mentality, where I think samurai had, from what I've read, they like I said, once the 8 virtues came in, they became, there was a family thing. They took care of the people inside their realm kind of area. They kind of protected.
And that was always their role. So the political situation in feudal Japan was a mess. Largely what happened is that all the power families, they weren't samurai. They were diplomatic level rich people, right? They had families that went back a long time and they had accrued power, and those people tended to live where the main power was, either Kyoto or Edo, depending upon how things were shuffling, right? But they needed people to watch over their realm, protect it, collect taxes, things like that. So along comes this class who they later would name samurai, who would naturally fit the bill, being able to do these things for those families. And, during the early, depending upon, this varied widely across all of Japan, right? Like the northern Japan would be different from southern, and each region would be different, and some would be more benevolent than others. But it came down to samurai being the ones who kept everything working and functioning and together and defended it. Okay. While everybody else was trying to maintain the power in the court.
Okay, cool. Now, obviously, like most, you have a special uniform, I guess is what you would call it. Or is it called a gi, or is it not? I know some people,
There are lots of names for it. So the gyogi is basically the top of a martial arts uniform. Okay. And this is the keikogi for Iaido. It's lighter weight. It's a polyester blend. Allows you to you're not expecting any contact or grappling. So, you're not wearing kendo style or judo style or any other sort of, and you need more movement. The hard canvas ones are out. Yeah. So you want something that bends and
more
breathes.
Lightweight.
This is called the hakama. Hakama, which is I think the best part of being able to train in this art, outside of all of the extra awesome clothes you get to wear. The hakama are your pants, and everything is held together by the obi.
Okay.
And so you put on the gyogi first, tie on the obi, and then the hakama comes up over. You tie the sides. You try the front first, and then the back comes around. And then the swords fit into the folds of the obi. So you can see that it's actually very long.
Yeah.
So you wrap it around yourself several times.
Gotcha.
And the swords fit into the different folds. And most everybody, so while I have the full set, I only wear the Yaido for training. I can train with this. I don't suggest I don't disallow my students from training with it, but I think in the dojo it makes sense not to, because it's complicated, right? So you've got basically two swords coming out, right? And so now you have to do all of your practice with your hands trying to figure this out. And there's enough for you to learn and not put this into the mix.
Yeah.
And what I told my students, because I have some who really want to learn it, and I think that's great. But I tell them that they don't have to worry. If they learn how to draw and return the sword correctly, then having the wakizashi will be second nature. They won't have to spend any time learning how to avoid it. They just do.
Cool. So is it, like, I know this is like maybe, again, ignorance, not knowing, is it colors mean anything, like in martial arts, the different belt colors? Is there a significance to what color, like what, I'm not going to say it right.
I understand. So historically, brown was reserved for the headmaster.
Okay.
But I don't think that's a thing anymore.
Okay.
Not in our school. I've seen lots of different colors, and when students approach me about what it is that they want to, what they should buy to come to class, I'm like, well, I mean, just make it functional. Like you don't have to wear, let's talk about what you would need bare minimum to be a student, right? This or something like it, and this, something to use. This can be used for both kumitachi and iaijutsu. Okay. And that's it, right? The rest of it, once you feel comfortable, you can get anything else, but that's really the main part. Now the colors, as you can see, I tend towards blue, and that's my personal preference. I like green because of its ties to bamboo. Okay. And the metaphors that bamboo bring to us, which is longevity and springliness and resilience. Yeah. So, but I think the only rule is like nothing ostentatious. In Japan, that would be looked down upon. So, like, have you traveled to Japan?
No.
You would notice that they wear many of the same colors. Yeah. Typically blacks and whites.
So a glittery belt would be like
glitter. I tend to
rhinestone.
If you want to bring into the dojo, let's train here. That's fine. But the moment somebody else sees you, I don't. I try to keep the prescriptions in the dojo to a minimum. Because you've got enough to do to learn all the honor and respect that's here. And I think eventually you just come to a natural state of self-expression. Yeah. And that's really what it is. Like, I remember my teacher being like, well, your obi is just into self-expression. Yeah. And I was like, oh, so I don't have to get white or blue. And I saw the green and fell in love with it.
Nice. So obviously people who are listening probably want to know, where could they go? Because we've been talking about, now people are hearing, oh, I can learn it.
Yes.
How do they get in contact with you or with your dojo to learn, if they want to do it?
In this modern day and age, we are all over the social medias. Okay. So you'll find our dojo, which is in Frederick, Maryland. Okay. We train in Jefferson, which is just a little south, at Foxhaven Farm. Okay. We're at Monday nights from 7 to 9. We have a seminar coming up, and I think after the seminar, I'm going to be branching out into more time slots because I really want to help let this art grow and breathe more. Yeah. And that largely comes down to my time and how I can work out a schedule between my family and everybody. But we're on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a website. So
I'll get all those from you, and I'll put them down as a link below this so people can just click on it. Okay. That way you don't have to say all of them. But so They're online.
Yeah,
You
we
can learn.
exist. We exist in the digital world.
Yes.
Yeah, even though I'm a bit of a Luddite, but yeah.
That's awesome. This is really fascinating. I'm probably going to have you come back on and explain more. Because I love the history. I love the history of it all.
It's very rich.
It's
and I fell in love with it based on the glamour of it, right? The chivalry, but at the end, you start learning and you start talking to people and you're realizing other people have your same passions and you exchange ideas and you read some books and you're like, it's humanity from both its ugliness as well as its beauty, all mixed together in the arts that came out of Japan and all. And Europe was no different. No other part of the world is the same. But we all have this history, which is provides a means of self-expression and growth, and that's also fascinating to study and really fun to do.
Yeah, it's you've piqued my interest majorly on this. This is way cool. Well, just anything with swords.
I'm anything hooked. With swords.
Yeah. But I thank you for coming on and sharing this and doing it. And again, I want to have you back. And those of you who are listening or watching, thank you for stopping by and check out our stuff. Go on the social media links. And if you want to learn, now you know where you can go. And remember to, as always, stay safe and keep searching.
Fedora.
Check out FedoraCRT.com today.